Welcome to Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back. Thank you for joining me in this episode. My name is Patrick, and I'm Frack. Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back is a show where I discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. So I'm currently working through Bleach, 1,000-Year Blood War, and connecting it to lessons from the Bible. I'm going to be continuing studying 1,000-Year Blood War until the conclusion of this series/section. And I might go in a different direction after this part 2 of 1,000-Year Blood War goes on a hiatus. I might do something different. It could be anything ranging from other anime, comic books, Star Wars, movies, you name it, I could talk about it. The name of the show comes from my dad, who dubbed my brother and me Frick and Frack since we were kids. All right, so this episode I am discussing Heart of Wolf from Bleach, 1,000-Year Blood War. So in this episode, we get to see some great combat from Komomaru, and then we get to see Mask, the Stern Ritter, and he's very interesting, and he comes across as that, showboating wrestler character from fighting games, that always kind of drives you nuts, but when he turns out to be, always drove me nuts when I played against like Zangief, and they knew what they were doing. Man, I just terrible at it. And so we get to see all that great just teasing of it, because my understanding is that the Mask fight is going to be the central focus of the next episode. And so, but there is great combat. This episode strongly centers around Komomaru, and so versus Bambietta. Bambietta has a really fun power where her ability is explode, that she can make things explode. So she's very much like Bakugo, except for has less of a side effect. But anywho, that's a whole other thing. So she defeats Shinji, 5th Division Captain and Visored, almost takes out Momo, but Komomaru comes and deals with her. And so what we see in this episode as they fight, Komomaru has revealed that he has learned the secret technique from his clan that has turned him into human, which has also made him immortal for a certain amount of time. And so he is invincible. He does great, and Bambietta is just blown away by all this. Sorry, no pun intended. And so because of Komomaru's transformation into being a human and his invincibility, he actually shows his second stage of Bankai. And so his Bankai was always the giant samurai that could swing a giant sword. And now one of the drawbacks to his Bankai is that whatever damage the Bankai takes, he would take 2. But because of his immortality for a brief amount of time, it doesn't affect him. And so he's able to do so much more. He's able to be faster, he's stronger, because he no longer has the armor on. And so because of that, we see Bambietta kind of get frustrated. And she's like, oh, well, fine, I'll take this seriously. And it still doesn't matter that Komomaru is able to defeat her. So one of the interesting things about the second stage of Bankai, is that when we see the powerful captains in the Gotai 13, they measure it by not only having Bankai, but having multiple stages within that Bankai. Byakuya was very well known for that. His Bankai is very versatile. He has several different ways that he's able to use it. Yamamoto, when we saw his Bankai for the very first time in the first part of this season, the previous season, where he's killed by Yawaba. He had 4 different functions to his Bankai. Now, granted, all 4 of them were incredibly powerful on their own, but the fact that he had multiple stages showed his versatility and how well he knew his Bankai. And so Komamaru is showing that same versatility in this fight, having shown that there is in fact a second stage to his Bankai. Now it comes with extra peril and things like that, but that's always the catch. They don't want people to be omnipotent. There has to be a catch somewhere, and so that was the catch. And so he does that, defeats Bambietta, of course, and Komamaru is the focus for the biblical lesson in this episode. And so the biblical theme is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 and 32. This is what it says. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. So after Komamaru defeats Bambietta, he didn't want to fight Bambietta. When he came across her first in a previous episode, but Shinji said, I got this. You go after Yawaba. You go take care of that. Well, he didn't really say go after Yawaba. He says, I've got this. You have another purpose. And so, unfortunately, because Shinji lost, and then Momo was trying to get involved, Komamaru was like, well, I've got to get involved. And so that's how that led to that happening. He's like, man, this isn't what I want to use this for. He's like, but I got to take her out, or other Soul Reapers will die to her. And so that in itself is a very noble trait, and I like that. But after he defeats Bambietta, he's like, I've got to kill Yawaba. I've got to get revenge for Yamamoto, because Yamamoto was one of his reasons for joining the Soul Reapers, because Yamamoto welcomed him even though he was a part of the werewolf clan. And so so as Komamaru keeps moving forward, his body is getting tired and it's getting weaker, and then he starts to transform into a wolf, and not a humanoid wolf like he was before, but a true wolf. During that time, he has flashes to a conversation that he had with Tosin at the Battle of the Fake Karakura Town, and during that, he had chastised Tosin for seeking revenge and for being, for seeking that vengeance instead of seeking true justice. And during that time, as he is transforming, he realizes that's what he did. He sought vengeance for the death of Yamamoto, not justice. And so, this is a shonen anime / manga. And so fighting and combat, it's expected to a certain extent for most shonen and shonen anime and shonen manga. And so fighting for revenge and just fighting in general, like I said, that's an expected trait for a lot of these shows, and especially shows that I enjoy. I like fighting. It's fun to watch. It's not a good thing to do, but that's a whole other thing, which is why this is the biblical lesson in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 through 32, that Paul is writing to the church in Ephesus, that instead of building up negative emotions like bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander and malice, like all of these negative feelings will lead to poor actions, to in a way your spiritual death, along with potentially your physical death as well, if you go after seeking vengeance. That instead, Paul encourages the church to be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgive one another as God in Christ forgave you. I've been going through the Bleach manga recently, and I'm actually in the Fake Karakura Town story arc, and actually just recently read the conversation with Komamaru and Tosin, and one of those things where Komamaru, kind of expresses some forgiveness and some compassion towards Tosin, because he didn't want to kill him and he didn't want him to die, and so the fact that he had to kill his friend was very participate in his death, because it was actually Hisei who did it, but that's not important. But, Komamaro participated in that. He didn't want to. He was his friend. And so we as the church, we are called to be like Christ. We're not called to go for revenge. We are instead called to forgive and to be compassionate. And so I want to encourage you in this time that if there is something that is welling up within you that could be considered as bitterness or wrath or anger, clamor or slander or malice, anything like that, instead switch to kindness. Be kind to one another. Be tenderhearted. Forgive one another as God and Christ forgave you. So that's your challenge. So let's rate this episode. Now, I always struggle with Komamaru because his combat is so slow and bulky. Now, it is cool, and his Bankai being animated and drawn for Bleach 1,000 Year Blood War is always been impressive. It was very impressive in this, but it was always impressive back in the original series of Bleach. But I've never been a fan of just, big swings, stuff like that. It's just not what I find visually appealing. Is it cool? Yes. Is it a great Bankai? Absolutely. But, for me, it was just, basically he stood there, took the punishment, and then waited for one swing, and that was it. And so for me, that I just find that not as appealing as visually appealing as it was to see it done. It was great. It's just, meh. So I'm going to give this episode a 3.75. It was really good. I kind of wish the Komamaru section was, a little bit less, so we could have seen more of Mask's fight with with Hikaku and the such. But we'll get to see more of Mask in the next episode. So like I said, 3.75. It's good. There's, I'm just unfortunately a little biased against Komamaru. So, anyone with questions for me about the biblical lesson that I talked about in this episode, or any other discussion ranging from anime, comics, or anything in general, feel free to email me at frickityfracktalkback@gmail.com, or reach out to me on X at frickityf, or at frickityfrack on Instagram and Facebook. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Press that like button. Leave a comment in the comment section below. If you put something out there that I think would be a good thing to discuss in a future episode, I'll be more than happy to pull it and discuss it on the episode. Remember that I love you. Most importantly, God loves you. Go release your Bankai.